returning to our open session, and we'll proceed down the agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the January 23rd, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We don't have public comment, so we'll proceed with the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. 1, personnel recommendations. Peggy Barrett, senior high school softball coach. Josh Ott, senior high varsity softball coach. Resignations, retirees. And 2, student tour requests, Westmont High School and Westmont Junior High School. Any motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Okay, we'll proceed with discussion, but we are scheduled to start our facility planning consultant presentations at 7:30. So we'll come back to that, and we'll proceed with the policy committee report in the first reading.
So on January 29th, we held the meeting, committee meeting of the board to review policy changes that were recommended by the agency that we hire, which those policy changes were scrutinized by their attorneys. And so tonight is just a recognition that we held that meeting and that we will vote on that at the February 27th meeting.
Can you just kind of like real lightly overview like what the general changes are? Are they mostly like language changes or like?
That's exactly what it is. There are some footnote changes, some slight wording. There was no, what I consider major changes that would be controversial or concerning. I don't know, that's the take from the rest of the committee.
And isn't it just like updated, like in general, like due to policy that's passed in the state, like it's updated like that usually?
Usually.
Yeah, this is coming to us from press. And what is press? Can you?
So press is an agency that reviews policy changes done at the state level, and then school boards and districts hire press. So frankly, their attorneys can look through and scrutinize all the policy changes. And so we pay for that service, and then they give us their recommendations, and then the board can review those.
And so it's something that's sent out to the board members to review, you know, more, they can scrutinize a little bit more, but some fun reading. But they do outline like what's been changed if you want to get specific. But basically it's like our alarm system too, to tell us like, hey, you guys better consider this. And they, in general, are recommendations, correct, that if we didn't want to adopt them, you know, we can discuss them. But it wasn't really anything in there that, as a committee, we found that we need to discuss heavily.
Nothing
but
extenuating.
Please review. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why we have this, so you can review it yourself, and then we vote on it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Should we say more about that, or? So the district hires this agency that has expertise on reviewing policies, and their attorneys review all of the policy changes. So the board doesn't have to scrutinize all those things.
Right.
They don't have to.
Yeah, and really like all the districts hire press.
Yes.
Like press is.
It's a common practice of districts to
Yeah.
hire press, to have their attorneys.
Because we're just lay people. They're the experts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we appreciate that. You get the best to help you.
If there are no other questions, we'll go to 3 and talk about the equity work that's coming up with presenter Brian Butler.
Sure, so part of the equity work and also part to celebrate African American History Month and part to an ongoing efforts to improve our curriculum and instruction and practices. The author, Brian Butler, is coming to our district on February 21st. He will visit each building and talk to all of our students, building by building, and then he will address our entire staff in the afternoon. He recently authored a book called All Students Deserve a Gifted Education. Previously, he was an author on What About Us, which is a book about professional learning communities at the lower elementary level. He's a national consultant and speaker. He's very dynamic, very practitioner of 25-plus years, highly respected. All parents in the community who could find the time are welcome to RSVP, and then they could attend one of his presentations. So he'll start at Manning and then move on to Miller and go to the junior high and then the high school in the afternoon. And we have put out some information, but we'll put more information out tomorrow. So we're really excited to have him in the district, very knowledgeable, highly respected, powerful, inspirational message, speaking to our students, K through 12, and to our entire staff, and to any parents who are interested in attending.
Yeah, I got the invitation today. I thought it was great.
I registered.
So did
Great.
I.
All right.
Short, simple, and to the point. And thank you for opening it up to parents.
Yeah.
This is a big benefit to 201. Yeah.
I'm excited that he's coming to our district, and that anybody in our district who wants to come see the presentation is most welcome to attend.
Just disregard that. You don't have to sign. I don't have to sign.
Any other questions?
Just sign it.
Okay. We'll move to our monthly financials for January 2024.
Attached in the board agenda are the financials of January 2024. I'll be going through 3 of those documents. The first will be the revenue report. Thus far through the month of January 2024, the district has received 52% of its total revenue. That is better than projected at 49%. On the expenditure side, the district has spent roughly 52% of its total expenditures. That is significantly better than projected at 61%. Going forward at every board meeting, I want to present the projected end of year surplus or deficit. So at the end of the year, looking at January 2024, the district is projected to have a surplus of $168,000. What makes up these projections are looking at the last 5 years of trends and projecting out the next few months through June 30th based on those trends. I can adjust the trends based on conservative approach, such as I can adjust the levy collection rate and all that. But this is a conservative approach, analyzing our current revenue that we collected, our current expenditures that we have spent, and projecting the next few months through June 30th.
That balance, right, $160,000, does it have to go somewhere in particular? It just hits our fund balance, or?
It is our fund balance looking at the operating funds.
Okay, the
So
operating expenses.
It's the whole operating expenses. So it's looking at educational fund, operation and maintenance, transportation, IMRF and FICA and tort. So that's the operation fund, operating funds, which was approved as a balanced budget.
Can I ask a question just as like a peek in? How's the transportation, just overall?
Great question. Overall, the transportation fund has seen a decrease of expenditures because of the switch of the taxis. Currently, myself and the SACID business managers in that co-op with Sunrise, our SPED transportation, we are in negotiations of extending the contract at least 1 year, and then potentially going out to the bid. But overall, the spending has decreased. And that's a big win on the district's part, because we did have a increase of students transporting in McKinney-Vento and SPED from prior year. So the costs, decreasing those costs, not using the taxi services was a benefit.
And we're happy with the service?
We are happy with the service. Safeway is our McKinney-Vento transportation company that we bid out last year. We are happy with the service. They're able to fill the routes. They have drivers, they have buses. There are some complaints here and there from parents, but overall, it's good. Sunrise, on the other hand, again, it's going back and forth of the current contract and looking at invoices, and so there's going to be updates to the board going forward with the Sunrise alone. But yeah, the transportation fund is looking good, better than historically.
Nice.
Any questions?
All right. Should we proceed with our action items? Let's go. Just keep going down. We can leave the presentations for the last one. All right. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the agreement between the Westmont Education Support Personnel Association and the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 201 for the period beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2028 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. So we can go to the superintendent's report if you guys don't have any objections in board reports.
I do want to just briefly, the WESPA contract was reached by unanimous agreement of WESPA. I think that's pretty impressive. It speaks to the relationship between WESPA and the board and the entire district. It's really a positive. We shouldn't just, and we did it in a very timely fashion. And once again, with no involvement from attorneys from our end. So that was a cost savings to the district. It speaks to, I think, the fairness of the contract that the board and the district offered and to the quality of the WESPA organization. So it's great to see partnership come together. We shouldn't take that for granted. It's solid. I don't know, it's about as good as it can get. So we're excited about that. Once again, our teachers, our coaches, academic coaches, and our admin are working tirelessly to examine student performance information and examine our curriculum and our practices, and the quality review will take place at our next board meeting, but we're making better than anticipated progress that we'll discuss at the next meeting. But I'm really unbelievably grateful for the hard work of our teachers and our admin and our coaches, especially as they continue to improve the academics in this district for our students. So that's great. Quick shout out to our cheerleaders at the junior high, took second place in conference. Incredibly talented and enthusiastic group. Third place in conference for the chess team at the junior high. That's really neat. Third place in the wrestling conference. It's the first time, to our knowledge, that our wrestling team brought home a trophy. And the guys and the parents were, and girl, Zoe too, were really excited about their participation in that event. It was beautiful. We had 6 high school wrestlers go to the sectionals. Unfortunately, none of them advanced to the state finals this year, though they're all underclassmen, so they have another shot at it next year. And tomorrow, Thursday night, our girls' basketball team is going to play for the regional championship.
Where's that game?
Catalyst
Maria.
Maria in the city. At 67th in California, so come and cheer them on, but.
That was my former high school.
Oh, really?
Oh, wait,
Are you
that
torn?
was Maria? As in
Maria
from when we
Yeah,
were kids?
yeah.
When it was
Maria?
Maria.
I,
Yeah.
the green uniform, Maria, yes.
Yeah, when it was Maria. But-
Okay.
Excited and
Yeah.
Damn, I should have come.
they love to have their fans.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We're very optimistic about them taking the regional championship. They'll
Yeah.
earn it on Thursday, we hope. Awesome. So, yeah. I have one quick statement that I want to read from Amy Quattrone and from Kristen Ritchie. Amy, of course, our principal at the junior high, and Kristen Ritchie, our literacy specialist and coach. And Amy, as many of you know, was one of the key leaders in bringing the Illinois Reads event to Westmont. This is the second time we've hosted it, but I just want to read a quick statement because they had family obligations, but they wanted to express their gratitude. As many of you know, CUSD 201 hosted for the second time the Illinois Reads Book Festival on behalf of the Illinois Reading Council. The event took place on Saturday, February 4th, and was a huge success. In order to put on an event of this magnitude, it truly takes a village, and that is exactly how we made it happen. Our committee consisted of community members, CUSD 201 staff members, village staff members, non-for-profit organization, local fire and police departments, and notably you as the Board of Education. This group of people have been meeting since last August to make this event possible. I want to thank all of you for your support for this program and want to give a special thanks to Leah Conover and Ann Steckeke for the countless hours they devoted to this event. Leah and Ange not only came to all of the meetings, they helped organize logistics, coordinated PR, and successfully wrangled over 60 junior high student volunteers on the day of the event, which we all know was no small task.
Wrangled.
Yes, yes.
Thank you again to all of you. Your support is appreciated, and your dedication to the community is second to none. And I think the attendance, we had almost 350 people there, and 25 authors from around the state, and the Illinois Reading Council, one of the main promoters of literacy in our state, was really grateful to Westmont for hosting it. So thank you to the entire board, but especially to Ange and Leah.
Was it Leanne Trotter, our state assistant superintendent of the
Regional office, yeah,
Yes.
was present too.
She came and spoke as well. It was fantastic.
It was really cool.
Was it Leanne Trotter?
It was a really amazing event. I
It
mean,
was.
Huge kudos. It was super fun to host it. The high school was an exceptional host for us after a very busy Friday night
Yes.
into a super busy Saturday morning. The custodial staff, like, massive shout out. But it was like, there's nothing better than seeing 350 people with smiles on their faces and seeing these kids like meet authors and you know, read from authors that they've known on the page, and then they get to meet them in real life and ask them about how they became authors, and like, just, there were smiles all around. It was a super fun event. It was really awesome. It's very special.
Yes, it was outstanding. And that's one of our key commitments, is to develop literacy amongst our young people, and this event helped to promote that. So thank you to Leah and Ange for your extra effort. I know you were at every meeting and helped with making that come off, so. And then just a week ago, gosh, right? We had our Realtor Fair. There were 49 realtors who were in attendance, leaders in our community. I thank Carlos and Leah and Ange for being there too. And it was really a positive way for us to speak to the quality of our district and have those real estate agents learn more about what people get when they select CUSD 201. So,
Thank you. Awesome. So we'll go back in our agenda and have our first presenter.
So the district interviewed 7 consultants for the idea of being a consultant for the facility planning of the district. Tonight we are presenting 2 of the 7 consultants. Tonight, first up, we're going to have Con Corbett present. He interviewed with Ed Sullivan. Unfortunately, Ed cannot be here, but Con will go through a presentation to the board and the community.
How should I pass these out?
You could just, here.
I'm gonna just take one pass. Yep. There you go.
All right, we're getting some paperwork passed out. I'll start with thank you everyone for your time, for having us out. I know you guys are very busy and these board meetings tend to get very packed, so we do appreciate you having us out. As Anthony mentioned, my business partner Ed Sullivan and I work very closely together on this work, so I'm happy to be here to present and talk with people who, we've worked with a lot of school board members and school districts throughout the state, and I know you guys have, because we've dealt with it with you, by your side, a lot of work that you have to do and a lot of challenges you have to face. It's a thankless job oftentimes, working on volunteering your time on a school board, and it's a challenge, but there's a reason why Ed and I do this and why it's so important to us. This work is personal. We're from this state. We're very local. We care about this state. Ed, my business partner, served in the state legislature for several decades and has served in local government for a long time. For me, growing up in a family where I didn't have a chance at a good school, a good education, it's been a passion of mine to work with school districts and try to make sure that every kid has the opportunity that I didn't have. And so this is really personal for us. It matters to us. And so we're here to try to help your district have that same positive outcome that we've helped dozens of other school districts. As an aside, I mentioned being local. My mother-in-law literally lives 5 minutes exactly along the train tracks at the next stop. So we're very local. Just was with her this weekend. So we know these communities. We care about these communities. It isn't just a job for us. This is a passion. This is something we invest ourselves in. And so we'll be your partners should you choose us to make sure the outcome here is a favorable one. We know there's important work the district needs to do. We know we need to talk to the community and find out what their feelings are towards different projects and work and come to a consensus that is a positive consensus where we can move forward. And that's where we focus, is finding that positive consensus. That's what my business partner was known for down in Springfield, working with both parties, both sides of the aisle. It's what we do through this process, is bring everyone together, because forget red or blue, these are everybody's schools. And we can all come together here to know we want to provide the best education possible for our children. And so what we will do is engage your entire community, bring everyone out, make sure everyone's voices are heard. Whether it's at different times of the day, different days of the week, different languages for Spanish-speaking individuals, whatever we can do to remove those barriers so that everyone can have their voices heard in this process, that's important to us. By the end of this, we'll present to you a report that has over 1,000 data points from members of your community. Different times that people came and said, hey, this is what we think, this is what we like, this is what we don't like. You're going to have a lot of data in front of you from your community, feedback from the members of your community, to know how to make the best informed decision on how to move forward with a plan and possibly even a referendum. That's what we'll provide throughout this process. Some things you'll see, and I'll direct your attention mostly to this page. The thicker one's just a promotional material that shows some of our wins and successes. But I'm going to walk you through mostly this Why E.O. Sullivan page. And a bit of our approach, and I'll do it quickly and then we can open it up for questions. Really what sets us apart, aside from being local, there's 3 things I'll draw your attention to. Number 1 is that local and knowing Illinois. Having served in Illinois on boards in volunteer capacities, my partner being an elected official, and us doing this work throughout the whole state, we know the voters of the state, we know the people of this state. We've worked with districts surrounding you, and we've worked with elected officials surrounding and covering this community. We know what matters to the voters of the community, we know what matters to the people, and if you're not from this area, you maybe don't know just what's so important to the members of the community, and we bring that knowledge, we bring those relationships with elected officials, and that's very helpful for a process like this, especially if you end up at a referendum. I know this could end up needing an increase in the debt limit. My partner being down in Springfield could help make that happen. Again, no matter how this process goes, we're going to be able to help shepherd you through all the way to the end. None of our competitors are able to say that they have that level of local experience and that they are local like that. The second thing is that combination of government and political experience. My business partner brings the government, I bring the politics, and for us it's a great marriage because you're going to need both of those. You need to know how people think, what matters to them. I own a polling company and we've tested words and phrases. We can tell you this word works really well, this word works very poorly when we're developing messaging and communications. I love the messaging you guys have on your website, and there's just a couple words I see in there that I say, man, I hope we get to work together, because if we just make this one tweak, this is going to be so amazing, because you've got a great thing here with being a smaller district. We work with some communities and some districts where they're able to build a lot of positivity around being local, being a neighborhood school, being that smaller thing being a positive, which you guys really do with your branding and your messaging. We've seen that work very well. We've got polling even around it that we're happy to share to really help you message and strengthen that messaging. That's the experience we have that no one else in this space has. They come from polling companies, communications companies, or architecture firms, and that's great. They all have a place in this process, but if this does go forward at the referendum, it will be a political process. And so having the combination of that experience between Ed and myself and our team is a really helpful thing for our clients, and it's proven to be very helpful for them. The last thing is we conduct true community engagement. It's not just a couple sparsely attended meetings or maybe a mail survey. We do real community engagement. We want to engage as many members of your community as possible, favorable and unfavorable. We want them all to have their voices heard. I know you guys are it's not a secret to you that oftentimes things can get controversial when it comes to schools and school districts. Many of you probably dealt with it last April, dealing with some of those situations. And we found if we bring everybody to the table, table and make sure they have their voices heard, we can come up with a consensus plan that gets a majority of the community extremely excited because it's their plan then, it's community driven, and we want to leave you all better off than where we started. Because we're from here, because my mother-in-law would kill me if I didn't, we want to make sure that when we leave here, you guys have a really solid working relationship. Not that you don't already, but a great relationship with the members of your community, because we don't know what you might face next. You know, we're proud of the fact that some of our clients that we'd worked with pre-COVID, during those rough COVID days that we don't even want to say that word anymore, they had no one came out to their board meetings unhappy. They had no controversies. They were never in the news because we had built such a great working relationship between the district and the community and brought everybody together. That's what we pride ourselves on, again, because this is our home state. We've got to leave you guys in a favorable position, especially because we do not promote our services. Every client we've ever gotten comes from a reference. We don't do any advertising, any promotions. So if we don't come through for you, then we're not going to get our next 10 clients because you won't be telling them to work with us. And so it's incredibly important we come through for you, not just today, but long term. That's what sets us apart. I'll briefly run through our process and then open it up to questions. Two things I like to talk about with our process. The first thing is the data and the way that we capture it. This needs to be a data-driven process. I know you guys take a research-based approach. We're very similar in that regards. I could come in and say, here's what I think, but I got to tell you, we've tested the same thing in 4 different districts this year, the same type of project, and it got completely different responses each time. One district loved it, one district hated it, one district didn't understand what it was, and one district didn't care. It's amazing how every community is unique, and so we want to make sure we're talking to the people of your community to make sure that the data we bring to you all is representative of them. It's not just what we might think, having worked with dozens of school districts, and so we want to capture data. We'll do so in 3 ways. The first way is through a community committee. We call that the informed group. Those are people who, from a data perspective, are going to know a little more. They're involved with the schools, they're very locally active, they're civically active. We're going to put them on a committee. You may already have some version of this, but we'll put together a committee we would call the community committee, and we'd have multiple meetings where we talk through things, answer their questions, have members of your administration or even possibly your board if you wish, have your experts like your architect or your financial advisor there to answer their questions. That's the first way we're going to gather data because they're going to give us more of an informed opinion as we ask them certain questions. The second way we'll gather data is through what's called intuitive responses. Basically, it's a gut reaction of the public. I wish we lived in a society where people got the information, got the facts, and then went out and voted. If you've spent more than 3 seconds on Facebook or if you've ever run for office, you know that's just not how society works anymore. And so the challenge is if this does become a referendum, a lot of people are going to go to the ballot box and just vote based on how they feel. They're not going to have a lot of factual information when they do so. And so you've got to gather data and meet people at that spot. We need to know how they feel intuitively at the beginning of this process, because if we're going to go to a referendum, we've got to have that information and know where they start. So now we know, is there some education that needs to be done to kind of explain to them why this is necessary? That will give us that data. The third piece, the third way we gather information is what we call passionate or passion responses. This is, as you guys have seen, sometimes you get people who are really passionate for or against something, or maybe they say, hey, if you're going to build a school, it better have a great music program because my kid's really gifted in band. You know, people are going to be very passionate about certain things, and we have to measure that. You can't just get people's opinions. I want to know how strongly they feel about certain things. And so the third subgroup is passionate. And I'm sorry, I missed it. I'll go back. The intuitive or the informed, the intuitive, the way we gather that data is through polling. I should have mentioned that. We do multiple types of polling. Most of our clients prefer phone polling because it's less expensive, but we can do mail, we can do texting, we can do online. We do it all. We'll obviously customize that around your needs. I forgot to mention that. Sorry. Back to passionate. The way we capture that information is through public engagement sessions. People who will take time out of their schedule, maybe get a babysitter for the kids or make time to come out to something. Those are your most passionate people. And so we want to capture their data and find out how do they feel. Because unfortunately, or fortunately, passionate small groups can sometimes win or lose an election if this does become a referendum. So it's important we capture that data as well. So it's community committee, phone surveys, and public engagement sessions. We also put this all up on your website and encourage people to participate that way as well. So that's how we will gather data throughout this process. We'll do it in a 4-track process or a 4-phase process. That's the approach section of the handout that we gave you. There's 4 phases that will go along. Phase 1 is more broad. We're going to ask people how they feel about the district. What are the advantages, disadvantages? Where could they maybe see some things of improvement? What does our district do very, very well? We're going to ask them those very broad questions. We'll keep it controlled. We don't want negativity taking over. It never has in the past. But ultimately, this is really helpful because we want to hear from them. As we're starting to build this plan, a lot of times what happens with districts is this step in the process provides them data that they weren't aware of, that people are unhappy about student drop-off, or they don't like their desks in this grade or in this school. It's just things like that that maybe don't have anything to do with rebuilding an elementary school, that are very helpful for you all as a board and an administration. We're mostly listening for how they say things, the way the community brings things up. What are they saying? How are they saying it? That's very important as we go forward to make sure that the work that we do reflects your community. We're going to help you with messaging in this phase, as I mentioned before. And again, it's about reflecting you all. We've worked with a ton of districts. I could write this from start to finish, but I want it to reflect District 201, not me, not my company. And so we'll have a meeting with your team, with your experts, with anybody else that your team wants to put in the room to develop messaging, and we'll listen and take notes as to the way you say things. Because even things like types of education or different classrooms, every school district calls it something different. So when we put something together, we want it to represent you, not us. And so that all gets done in phase 1. Phase 2, we'll work with your district and your experts, like your architect, if you have a construction manager, your financial advisor, to put together what we call a menu. It's individual projects or items that we can bring to the public to get their feedback. The reason why we do this is if you just go with a large package and say, would you like a new school that does X, Y, and Z? Someone might say yes, someone might say no. Why? Did they like 2 projects but not like 3 others? We don't know if we just give them the whole package right away. And so what we do first is give them each individual item and say, hey, are you in favor or against investing in infrastructure or mechanicals or new classrooms, STEM education, athletics, band, whatever it might be. We, of course, customize it to your district, but we want people's feedback on that. We also ask them, do you want to renovate versus build new? That's obviously a part of this. Are we going to be renovating or building something new or doing additions possibly? We're going to ask those questions. We're also going to provide tax impact and funding levels and ask people, how comfortable are you at different levels of these tax impacts? All this separate data is very, very helpful as we start to put together the plan, which of course is what your administration and your team will do. You'll have all this data to look at the end of phase 2. Phase 3 then brings it all together and says, hey, of these 3 final options, which would you like as a member of the community? And so then we'll give them maybe a low and a medium and a high in terms of price points on what would you like to see. That allows them to make the final choice, the final decision. Of course, you guys as the board, you make the final official decision. But the good news is at the end of our process, you're going to see that the community has a big consensus around a specific plan because they've been part of the process. It's their voices that drove each step. And so when you have something in front of you that says an overwhelming majority of your community really is in favor of X, Y, and Z, it gives you a great place to say, hey, listen, we listen to our people, we listen to our parents, our residents, and this is what they want. Let's put it on the ballot. And the great thing we've seen is they'll vote for their plan because it's their plan. The final phase, phase 4, is once you all have made a final decision, we will help bring that to the public, educate them on what that is, answer their questions, and run an educational program. And so E.L. Sullivan will stand with you all the way through Election Day. Should you have a referendum at the end of this, my company will split off and we will work with that referendum campaign. That's all separate from you all. I won't talk about it here because we're on public time, but just know that they'll have assistance as well. We walk you through all the way through, and that's where I'll stop, which is just one quick thing. The reason why we have 2 companies is to be overly transparent to the public. There are some companies out there who will say, hey, listen, we'll just pro bono help the campaign and you'll pay us on the front end. We don't think that that's overly ethical. For us, we want to show to the public that tax dollars are only going to the things that tax dollars are allowed to be spent on. And when it becomes a campaign, that is only funded by private dollars, not the public. And so by having the 2 entities, it's very clear to the public, very, very transparent where tax dollars are and aren't being spent. We've seen a lot of these can be lost with the small unforced errors, the little dumb things, not the big stuff, the little stuff. And so we're going to make sure that there's no mistakes made. We'll provide you all as board members, your teachers, your staff, anyone involved with the schools, we'll provide on what you can and can't do throughout this process, do's and don'ts, how to make sure you're doing everything legally. We'll make sure you're always above board as you do things so you don't put the district or even yourself in a bad position. We pride ourselves on every district we leave not only favorable, but any board member who does run for re-election, who wants to, every single one from our clients has won in their next election. We always leave our clients better off than where we started. I'll finally take a breath and open it up to any questions that you may have.
I just had questions about like the timing of the phases grossly, like what does that look like?
The overall process is typically 6 to 8 months. We've done it in as short as 2.5. Actually, we did it once in 45 days, and I never want to do that again. But it's typically around, it was crazy. It's typically around 6 months. We have a full proposal that we sent along that actually has exact timelines on months and deliverables. When will things be provided? When will things be done? We like to be very transparent with that, and so you all will have exact on what's being done, when does it have to be done, when will a report come before you as a board. It's all listed as deliverables in our contract because we want to be transparent about that.
For public engagement, typically what percent of the population do you hear from? What percent are you happy with to get them to be with or to voice their opinion?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've had situations where you have a lower percentage, and actually that alone is a data point. When we have fewer participants, that means we've got apathy. That means people don't necessarily care. There's good to that, and that they're not opposed. There's bad to that, and that they don't care. This being a presidential election, you're going to have everyone's going to go vote. So apathy isn't as big of a problem. Everyone's going to be there to vote in November if this does become a referendum. So we're not going to be as worried about what percentage. More, we want to make sure we have a representative sample, that everyone has been heard. We're hearing from seniors, we're hearing from business owners, we're hearing from young families, we're hearing from every ethnicity, every gender, every age. That's really where we're going to focus on, so we know that your entire community has been represented. In terms of the overall number, as I mentioned, we will typically have about 1,000 responses from the community. Some have been as low as 800 by the end of this. Some have been, we just had one that was at 1,400, almost 1,500. So it depends on a lot of things, size of the community, how interested people are in the whole process, but we're going to be proactive in making sure we're putting things in front of people. We really want to hear from you. Please, please engage. What we have found is that if you do that work, even if they don't engage, they're feeling really favorable towards your district because you gave them the chance. Maybe they didn't take it, but they had the chance to do so. We've seen districts that don't do that struggle because the public doesn't feel like they were heard. But in this case, when you do show that level of engagement, even for those who don't show up, they're very favorable and very supportive because they could have. So it's kind of a non-answer answer. I apologize for that. I'm sorry, in politics. Oh, no, but no, there are specific numbers we'll look for, like in the polls and things like that, and we share all that as we go. When it comes to the overall process, for us, it's more about making sure that every group and subgroup and demographic has had their voices heard.
Thanks.
And how do you reach, this is more semantics, but how do you reach the community? Like, what ways do you use to reach it? Like, is it everyone in that zip code, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so throughout it, we're going to work with the district. Obviously, the easy sort of low-hanging fruit is the district's communications channels, whether that be emails you might regularly put out, newsletters, things like that. So, of course, take advantage of those. Mm-hmm. We'll also engage with social media, try to get out to the public via social media. We'll engage local civics groups and ask for their help to get the word out. Obviously, we're here in the Village Hall. Oftentimes, the local village will be super helpful in this to get the word out. We'll also do, if it's in the budget for the district, we might do a mailing to promote a town hall, to invite people to show up. We'll do virtual plus in person, so that anyone who maybe can't come in person could do it virtually. We'll do social media like Facebook Lives, anything we can do to get people interested. We'll also do something that's unique to us, only because of my partner has these relationships, where we work with other elected officials, other entities, other units of government, where we say, hey, would you guys partner with us maybe and host a town hall, or would you invite people out, or maybe let's do a breakfast and talk about this. It's kind of a buffet approach. We've not seen one specific thing work more than others. We've had some districts do texting to try to put information out. We even just had a district do a town hall over the phone, so people could just do it from home. There's lots of options available. Really, we're just going to be looking to make sure we get in front of people and give them, if you had 10 different chances to participate and you didn't, by that point we can assume you're choosing not to participate.
How about like staff time,
Yeah.
right? Our staff is doing a heck of a lot right now, as all are, but like, what type of time commitment for our staff is this process?
Yeah, it's a great question because you guys have hired a staff to educate kids, not do a community engagement program. So we've got a 15-person team that works with us. And so we can do as much or as little of this process as needed. It's down to each client because each district is completely unique. We have some that really like to be hands-on and have the time and the skills within their team members. We have some that they have the skills, but they're way too busy, and then everything in between. So one of the first things we'll do is sit down with a client and say, what team members do you want involved with this? How much time do they have available? What would you like us to do? Your team will have the final say on everything. They will check the box. Nothing goes to the public or gets done without the approval of your team. Some of our clients will say that's all they want to do. Bring it to us. We'll say yay or nay, and that's it. Some want to be really intricately involved all the way throughout. We customize our plans. We customize our process around each client. So it really will come down to what works best for you all. That's how we're going to approach it.
Okay, and then timing, right? If this were to turn into a referendum, how do you decide, right? We've talked about a number of years. This is a presidential year, but then we have elections, right? Like, how do you decide that? How do you truly help us decide that? Because we've been shooting all over ourselves a lot. And we want to be prepared for all outcomes.
Yeah, so along the way, but especially at the end of the process, we're going to give you a lot of data, but we're going to really distill it down and say, hey, if you want to go in this election, it would have to look like this. If you want to go in that election, it would have to look like this. Because the unique thing about each election is, so elections are determined by those who show up. Turnout is key. And so a November presidential election looks way different than an April consolidated election. And so what we have found with all the work we've done, with the polling we've done, the political work my company does, we know what type of electorate will be there at each of those elections. We'll be able to tell you, listen, the referendum that your community wants, that you want to vote for, it would pass in November, but it wouldn't pass in April, or vice versa. We'll be able to tell you that because some projects are more favorable to an April electorate, some projects are more favorable to a November electorate. Until we see what your sort of final package looks like, and it's hard to really say which one will be better. I will say on average, November is looking pretty favorable. So most likely we'll be telling you, should your community be ready, should you be ready, November would be the best call, but we have some clients who have rushed. Obviously, it's no longer feasible for you, but have rushed to go in March, some who are waiting until April. And if the data says people aren't ready yet, you might have an education program needed, and maybe now you're waiting a year after that. We're going to make those options available to you, and then, of course, you'll make that final call.
And the, kind of timeline for that ability to make the final call, right? It's November 4th, right? October, September, and I know you may not be able to speak to it exactly. When would we potentially be having to make that final call?
So you guys have to vote by mid-August. I believe it's August 19th, but Rich and Ryan and my team are my ops guys. They'll probably tell you the exact date, but it's right around there in mid-August. That's when the deadline for you all to vote if you wanted to go in November. And so what we're going to do is get you ready well prior to that point, well prior to August, to make that determination. If the data says April's more feasible, well, now you're ready. But if we don't get ready by August and the data says November and you're not ready, you're stuck, you're in a bad position. So we're going to get you ready for that next election, should that be the appropriate path forward. And so that would be mid-August is when you would need to make that vote. So we'll have you ready for that point well in advance of that, and you'll be getting data all the way throughout. As you'll see in our full proposal, we're reporting back to the board 4 different times. Here's what we heard in this phase. So you're going to be seeing this process, you'll be feeling it along the way. We've not had a client who by the end is like, yeah, I know exactly where this is going, I'm ready, we got this. Because you're going to see the feedback along the way.
Okay. Cool.
I think we're good.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Volk to present to the board.
To see you all tonight. Let me get a couple things in order here.
Okay, no problem.
I wasn't sure how many to bring, but I'll go over tonight a little bit about our process, how we approach things.
Thank you.
Was that
Sure.
it? Great.
It's only much shorter than you.
Okay, so thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Jennifer Volk. I'm one of the 2 owners of Creative Entourage. And we are a company that's rooted in helping school districts connect with their communities. And so we do this through 4 different things. We have public opinion research. All of our decisions, all of our processes are rooted in data. We offer strategic communications, community engagement, and then also the graphic design and branding piece of things. We've been around for around 16 years. Our leadership of our team has more than 50 years of experience doing this. We've done a lot of school districts, and we've worked with a lot of school districts. The majority are up here in the Chicago area. A little bit about our team. We have a core team of about 12 to 13 people, and it really depends on your project, your needs, on who we will have on that team. But the key to this is that nearly everybody on this piece of paper has worked for a school district or a university. And so we're rooted in education. We've been in your shoes before, and that really helps us know how to work with a lot of you. So let's talk a little bit about community engagement and what that looks like. What the point of community engagement is really to learn about the challenges and opportunities facing your organization. And it's the chance for the community to discover these things. And it also helps the community be involved in developing those solutions. What we found through the years is that oftentimes your community members are just waiting to be asked. They want to be involved. And there's a lot of wisdom in crowds. If you think about it, when you're working together in a group, maybe for a volunteer organization or even as a board, when you start to dialogue and have those conversations, sometimes you come up with solutions that you may not have come up with on your own. And so there's really that wisdom of crowds and being able to pull in all different types of people from your community to help make these decisions and set a path forward. So when we look at input, we're going to be looking for 2 separate types of input. We want active participation. So we would love to have hundreds of people out at your engagement sessions, have that dialogue, have those conversations. And then also the research piece. And so that's your public opinion. That gives us some good, hard scientific data to base some decisions off of. And also see if those 2 are in line. We've had sometimes when the engagement program maybe doesn't quite line up what we're seeing on the survey. So what are those gaps and what do we need to fill them if they need to be filled? So when you think about, I want you to take a step back. Think back to when you were in school. And I want you to think about the best teacher that you ever had. Were they the type of teacher that stood up in the front of the room, gave you a lesson, talked to you from, I don't know, chalkboard or a whiteboard in my days? Or was it the teachers that gave you something hands-on and allowed you to discover those solutions and allowed you to discover those answers? That's the goal of community engagement. You may know where you're headed. You are in this every day. You know your schools, you know your buildings. A lot of your community doesn't. So rather than saying, here's our solution, we need to do this, let them discover that. Let them figure it out. Let them follow the path of discovery to learn what your schools need. The other thing that we found is that it really helps with communication. So we are at our core a communications agency. And a lot of it is getting that word out to the community. So whether that be through social media, whether that be through text messaging, whether that be through direct mail, how are we communicating with your community as a whole and remembering that it's not just your parents? So if you take a look at how our process starts, a lot of boards want to know how are we involved and how do we make sure that we have a hand in the process as well? All of our processes start off with a board charge. And we like to think of that as really your planning parameters. What are those guardrails? What do we want the community looking at? For example, one district specifically said, we are not looking at boundary lines. People are chattering about that in the community. That's not the point of this process. We have another district, they have an $88 million bond limit. They said, we're not going over that. So we have these dollars to spend. Community, what are your priorities? What do we need to be looking at? So you as a board set that charge for the community. Then we actually form what we call a facilitating team. This is a critically important team of about 30 people. We have a number of community members, and we like to look deep into the community. It's not that blue ribbon committee or the people that you always see. Who are those newer parents that maybe haven't had a chance to get involved yet? Who are some of those fresh faces? How can we start to involve some new people? That facilitating team facilitates the process. It also includes a few staff members, a few board liaisons, things like that. Their goal is to facilitate the process. We know engagement, we know communications. You know your community. The people who live here know your community. And so what they can do is really help figure out what works, what doesn't work. Does the information we're presenting make sense? Educators are famous for using jargon. How do we get that out of there so that the average mom and dad knows what we're talking about? That facilitating team filters all of that for us. What they do is then actually help plan those activities or those engagement things where people can get involved. And so whether that be work sessions, whether that be open houses, we'll work with that facilitating team to determine the best process to move forward. During that, they will educate the community about your buildings, educate the community about your schools, why you do what you do. They'll develop a final report for the board and present that to all of you. In the end, the decision is yours of what you decide to do with that feedback. Okay? When we look at those best practices, we always want to make sure that we're involving as many people as possible. We work for a lot of districts, and they'll be really happy that, you know, we send out emails to our parents and we send home backpack flyers, and I say, hey, what about people who aren't your parents? It's dead silence. There's maybe 40% of the community that has kids in your schools. That leaves a lot of people who don't. And so we need to make sure that we're involving them as well and reaching as many as we can. We want people having actual conversations. Let's have some dialogue. Let's talk through some things and really come to consensus as a community on what's best to move our schools forward. And then again, that ongoing two-way communication. I was working in a district last year, and the chief of staff came up to me and he goes, somebody came up to me at a barbecue. I had 3 people come up to me and ask what this process is. I said, good, it's working. That's what we need to be happening. So even if we don't have 1,000 people at a meeting, we want that communication to be happening, and that's critically important to make sure that people understand what's happening. We want to make sure we have citizens, and we want to make sure we have residents that are guiding this process. It has to be grassroots up, can't be top down, and so this process will help you get there. We found that a lot of these really need to be well planned. So that might sound like such a silly little detail, but making sure that if we're doing a community presentation, that it's rehearsed in front of the facilitating team before it actually goes to the public. Doesn't sound like that big of a deal, right? Huge deal. So when you get into finances, when you get into facilities, it's really important to have that filter of the community to say, does that make sense? Are we hitting the mark? Are we getting the right feedback from the community? So making sure those are well rehearsed, well planned, and that people have a good time when they come and they have a chance to get to know the community a little bit. So that's our engagement piece. Next up, we look a little bit at our opinion research. We merged with a company called Unicom ARC almost 5 years ago, and since then I've pretty much said we must do opinion research on any large project we're working on. Reason being, it gives us the data we have to have. Messaging is key. Do we call it a theater? Do we call it an auditorium? Is this a plan the community is willing to support? Do people understand your needs? The surveys are going to tell us that, and so we really need that data. Our data is reliable. Our surveys are anywhere from 30 to 35 questions. We've gotten that done to a science as far as how many questions we can ask. If we have people taking a survey, we want to make sure we can get as much out of them as we can. And then really accurate results. If you look at our results based on election data, they're pretty close. So that ends up giving you some really good data to make decisions on in the end. The third piece would be our communications. As I've mentioned a few times, it's really important to make sure we're reaching everybody and we're using a lot of different channels. We want to be hitting those houses 7, 8, 9 times just for that first engagement session. And so that may be door knocking, that may be, like I said, digital outreach, that may be direct mail. We're going to provide a lot of options and a lot of ideas and see what can work best here. We always want to make sure that we brand our programs, and so just included a few samples of some different programs that we've done here. There's twofold to this. One, it allows the process to get a life of its own and really start to develop a brand within the community. This is also the first activity that we do at the facilitating team meeting, number 1. It gives the community ownership of the process. It shows that we're listening. They're the ones picking the name for what we call this. And then they're the ones that in the end are going to pick out which logo we're using. Gives them a chance to have ownership and make sure that it's really representative of your community. Included a few more communication samples just for you to take a look at in here. And if we go to the end there, the goal of all of this is truly to build community understanding and support for your schools. And when I say support for your schools, I mean long-term support. We have numerous facilitating team members and community chairs that are now sitting in the seats where all of you are sitting. I was at a meeting in U46 last month, and it was kind of exciting. So when we do engagement sessions, we don't do town halls. We don't ever have anybody standing there with a microphone. We have a very detailed process for when people have questions. We want people to have the chance to dialogue and not give an opportunity for somebody to be on their soapbox. So U46 has been doing this, gosh, they're almost a year and a half now. They decided to continue their engagement program after the referendum to help do their redistricting. So we're at our engagement session, about 100 people in the room. This lady stands up, she goes, "Excuse me, I have a comment for the board." I'm like, wait, everybody understands this process. I've seen this particular community member at meetings before. What is going on? Can't do much at that point because she's talking. She goes, "I just want to thank the board." Okay, so I know they're closing my son's middle school, but he didn't have a bike rack. And I called, and within 2 weeks, you guys had a bike rack installed. And so much has changed in this district, and you're listening, and I appreciate that. So to have that happen from a process is really what this can do when it's done correctly. So it goes beyond the referendum. It's really building that long-term support. In the end, you're going to have committed volunteers. You're going to have strong community advocates, and you're going to have a public that understands your school system and understands what you're doing. I put together just a draft calendar at the end here that might work for you. We need to get into more details and learn more and have a lot more conversations. But what we'd like to do is start off with an opinion survey here in the spring. So we need a baseline, especially with some of the history that you guys are facing and things like that. Where are we? What are we sitting at? Kind of the baseline numbers. Start to develop that engagement program. Over the summer, get that information together. Launch an engagement program August through December. Do a second survey around Thanksgiving. Get it done before Thanksgiving. See if those numbers have moved at all. See if they've shifted. See what difference the engagement program has made. And then you can start to make some decisions on how to move forward if you're headed towards April. So. The other thing that first survey can do is if you are still toying with November, it can show you if you have a fighting chance or not. So I went through a ton of information really quickly, and I know it's late in the evening, so I apologize that I had to come a little later this evening. We had a campaign meeting that I had to help with some opposition they're dealing with. So open to questions.
I have a quick question about the surveys. What is the public opinion survey, whether it's number 1 or number 2? What's the methodology again?
We would be doing an electronic survey. So it's an electronic opt-in survey. We like to do telephone. You guys are too small. From what we've seen lately, the responses are just going way down on the phone surveys. They're also getting just ridiculously expensive. So what we are doing is in our larger school districts, we're running both. So we're doing an electronic and a phone. What we're finding is that when we weight the electronic survey, so when we say weight, we tend to have a lot more female responses than males on electronic, so we'll balance that out a little bit more so that we have a little bit more of an equal demographic spread. When we do that weighting, we find that the results are really close to those phone surveys. And so it gives you some good numbers and some good data to make some decisions on.
And electronic means?
Online. And there's
Right,
also
but I mean-
paper and pencil version as well that we always offer in case people need it.
That goes out through email, text message? How does it go out?
How do they get there? Yep, so we can do it a couple different ways. So we'd like to work with the district to use every communications channel possible within the district. Then we recommend sending a postcard to every single resident that we can in the district. And then we're increasingly seeing a great response off of text messaging. So I know that the word text messaging kind of makes everybody cringe a little bit. In fact, my business partner hates that we do them, but the data is showing us that they have about an 83% penetration rate. And so we see massive responses go up and things like that when we send those. There's gonna be 2 or 3 people that are mad that they're getting them. It's gonna happen. But for all of those that may not have known about it without that text, it's just effective right now, so.
I have a question, maybe for both, but how, with the public engagement, and like who's, as you say, like the board kind of sets their parameter, we're not going here, this is what, things that we want to concentrate on. Who's running those? Is it part of that team, or who runs those?
So who's actually giving the presentations to the community?
Yeah, or running that engagement process, or?
Yep, so we always conduct the first meeting. So my business team and I, we talk a lot at that. After that, we start to slowly turn it over to those community chairs. And so we always help prepare the agendas. We help set the agenda for that. The team actually helps us set what we call the syllabus or the timeline. And so with what I had in mind for your process in particular, because I think we've got a lot of things that we need to cover, and is to actually, at your first engagement session, ask people what they want to learn about. And so we can take that information and actually structure the engagement program around what the community has said they want to learn. And so whether that be a facilities presentation, whether that be Finance 101, any of those types of things. So what we do is we have the facilitating team review that feedback from the community, and they figure out what those meetings are going to be. With our guidance, of course, but we really like to give them ownership of the process.
So can you speak to like staff involvement during this process, and also like community, how many hours are we talking about people committing to this?
Right, and I think it depends on every process. So I mentioned U46. Theirs lasted about a year. They had, I think, 6 or 7 one-hour engagement sessions. Facilitating team met before and after each of those, so it's a decent time commitment for them. I would say in most communities, it's 1 facilitating team meeting and then 1 community meeting a month. There are some that we're doing right now because they want to get it done in time for November, where that's a little bit condensed. And so they're looking at 2 to 4 meetings a month, just to get us where we need to be.
What do you do if the interest isn't there? I mean, you talked about like 30 members of the facilitating team, and I'm like doing the math in my head of like how many registered voters we have in the northern part of Westmont.
Right. Well, and we actually are working in Avoca, which is itty bitty. I think there's 5,000 voters, so they're really tiny. And they were able to get it. So what we'll do is we'll work with district leadership, and we'll help you find those people. And so we have a whole matrix that we use. We have recommendations on how to reach out to different people within your community to help get nominations for that. And that's how we really get into the people that you may not know about yet. We tend to start with 30. It may trickle down to 25 or 20. So we like to start a little bit big, knowing that we're going to have a little bit of drop off there.
Okay. And then kind of same question on like timeline, right? You kind of mentioned timeline is really kind of bringing us out to Thanksgiving and expectation of like April. The reasoning behind that, how do you make the decision on timeline?
I think that right now, most of our clients that are going for November started their engagement back last November. So for us to get an engagement program in for you by November is going to be really, really hard. People need what we like to call kind of soak time with this information. And if we're putting too much out there too quickly, it can lose some of that transparency and that trust, because they feel it feels forced is the best way to describe it. I think what we could do is do a survey. If your numbers are coming back really, really high, maybe we just do a really strong communications program and look at it that way. I mean, we've had districts come back in the 70s as far as approval ratings, and they may not need the engagement quite as much. And so I think that first survey can give you some good data to look at. Now, if it comes back and you're in the 40s, we got a lot of work to do. So that can really kind of give you a good baseline on where things are going.
Any other questions?
No? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you so much.
If you have any questions after the fact, feel free to let us know. We're happy to provide more information or get into any more details. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board at this time?
What does our timeline on this look like, Anthony? Like on decisions, what does our timeline look like
Tonight
this?
would be the presentations, and the next board meeting would be the approval.
Okay.
And with the goal of, we've set for our, actually
March.
starting our.
March financial
engagement
meeting,
March,
yes, okay.
Yeah, to still hit that March thing. So we did speak about like giving the board like some time to digest there's a lot of information to digest, and we talked about having a finance meeting before our next board meeting, so 5 to 6 p.m., where we could discuss in more detail, or, I don't want to say discuss in more detail, discuss post-digestion.
Yeah.
Right? And also, obviously, that is a committee meeting, right? So, open to the public, if the public would like to, after they've seen these presentations and whatnot, be involved in that also, which we would love. And then we'd be able to make the decision. There's a time factor here. If we don't make the decision at the next meeting, if we're gonna move forward and who, we won't have them in place for the March, for our planned March. And I think we also potentially miss the mailer to help us with that March meeting.
And so, so the board has that to make it. I mean, it is in, also transparency. The board can also say, we need more time, and we have, we have to deal with that. But that was the thought, is having this presentation, having over the next 2 weeks, having a facility meeting where you can kind of voice or hear, if you want to hear more of the thoughts of a community member, if they want to be a part of that committee, or ourselves as we discuss that to make a decision. We also say, if needed, and kind of engage that where we are close to that time. But that was the hope, since we know there's time constraints, so we want to be fair to every board member, because we know everyone's busy and work, but hoping to utilize that time if we want to do the committee meeting before the board meeting.
Maybe we do like a straw poll of could you guys make a decision today, or do you want that meeting? Like, do you feel like coming out of this, like, I absolutely know who or if I'd like to go with someone? Do you guys feel like? I don't feel that way.
I can say, for myself as an individual board member, I do want to pour over this a little bit more and ask questions, and maybe even ask more of Anthony. I did look through, there is a cost, so we have to take that in consideration. I don't think there's a huge difference, but that's what we're considering.
It seemed the biggest difference was the piecemeal piece of the second one. We could pick and choose potentially, but total cost between the two was very similar.
And the two that we heard from tonight were after quite a bit of vetting, right? And talking to a number of different potential options. This isn't like, these are the two, and this is part of a process, right? And
So exactly. Yeah, the process started was getting recommendations and references for a list of consultants. And from that list of consultants, I went in and contacted the districts and get a feel of, okay, based on this list of consultants, who should I interview? So I narrowed it down from 15 to 7, and then 7 to the top 2.
Right. So that's what I wanted to make sure was clear, that we've considered 15.
Correct.
Spoken to 7 as a district.
Yeah.
And tonight we heard from the 2 that
You find the best options.
Yeah.
I appreciate that they seem different to me, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's pros and cons swimming around in my brain, but it'd be, I like the fact that they're different. It seems as though there's, and maybe even on certain, maybe not opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're on it, so.
And that was kind of my viewpoint as well, is to provide that difference and perspectives for the community and the board to really digest this information and see what's best for the community.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does either timeline that either one proposed present any difficulties, or are they acceptable? I thought we were going to go a little further out.
Well, it's all down to the survey in the
Yeah.
phase 1 of both consultants. I mean, again, with the board approval of the next board meeting, right after that, it's
Survey time.
survey time.
Survey.
And then at that point, both consultants can give a recommendation to the board on, okay, based on this survey and this style of survey, this is the best timing, or these are the results.
This is what we see, yeah. Yeah, I think the timeline sounded to me like that they both had like, this is not even a proposed timeline for you, this is just an example of a timeline, is the way I read it, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really, again, it's, they can give you, each gave a proposal timeline, but they can either shorten that up to speed up the process to see which, part of election year can, if we do go down the route of a referendum, they'll point that out. So that you can either shorten it and quicker the response, or extend it, but it's all based on the survey.
I have one quick question about sort of procedure as a board. Will we be voting on a proposal from the administration for one or the other of these? Is that what we'll be voting on when we
Yeah, we'll
vote?
be voting on choosing
Which one?
which one we would go with.
Right, but are they gonna make a recommendation? I have the same question, like, is it on us to decide, or kind of like hiring, like, they'll recommend, like, we think this is best financially, time,
Yeah,
all
I just,
that.
procedurally, I want to understand what
Yeah.
the vote might look like. Will it be,
So that's
This or this,
potentially the committee, which essentially says, from the committee,
The
this
committee's
is what
recommending
strongly
this.
recommend. And
Okay.
we will go with the recommended group from the committee,
yep, that answers the question.
So that'll happen on the 27th?
yes.
So essentially, what are we buying? We're buying a facilities plan? I mean,
no.
we're buying an
No.
engagement program that at the end of it, we have a long-term plan. I guess like that's the piece, right? It's a chunk of change. Chunk of change, right? But like, what are we getting, what do we walk out of?
I think one big thing I took from it, it's almost more than a referendum for me, and something that, like, as I ran and we've talked about, like, that it is, I know they have different words about it, and that's just kind of spinning, but the engagement part, like, even as I ran for, the seat, one thing I asked is, does the community know what's happening in the school? Does the community know what we do? Does the community know our story? And my answer is no. And I think that's one of the things we're buying, because it's hard for us to do. It's not my great specialty. I can read and take in information and talk to people and give my vote accordingly, but I struggle with that piece, and how do we do that? And I feel like, we're answering different questions. What do we do with our facilities? Do we do a referendum? But that original question is getting to these community members, getting people involved, getting that new person that's not known involved. That's like golden
Right,
to me.
like a mediator.
And this is a way that
almost.
we're getting that to answer even more questions than just the referendum. But I feel like that's a huge question to answer, but we're also getting that, we're getting that involvement. Maybe that's my hope too, that we have more out of this at the end. Because if, like they said, if the question is no, we're going to be talking about bonding and not a referendum, we're going to have so much more information and so much more involvement to draw from.
Also on that, I feel like we're getting taught, so like it's an educational program for us on how to get the engagement in there and how to approach the engagement. Like we can do what we've always thought we would done with the engagement, but this is gonna dig deeper. They're gonna coach us into the way we need to
Yeah,
go.
I mean, I'm just like, I like quantifiable things.
I
Right?
take it back to Jess, it was a great question you asked. Like, do we need this?
Yeah.
Right.
Does this district
Oh, when I
need
asked
this?
that last time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or why? That's the why. This is, why do these groups exist, or these companies? And is it needed? Can we do it by, ourselves?
I
kind of
mean,
thing.
after any good sales pitch, like, ooh, yeah, that sounds like it'd make our jobs a lot easier, but I don't know. I
Right.
don't
Do
think
we
I can
have-
answer that question
Yeah,
myself.
do we have the
but-
capacity to present this to the community in the way that it needs to be understood to the average person, to see what our facility plan is, to see what we can fix and what is on
I
a
guess
back
where I
burner.
struggle is that we still don't have our facility plan.
Right.
so, you know.
But I
there's that
think
too.
after that first survey, we'd be able to gauge how little or big it's gonna go. Right?
So, yeah, so to answer Lee's question and both of yours, so what we're buying is basically that community outreach, that communication to the community on where do you see the state of the district facility-wise? And how, do you like it? Do you want improvement? If there is an improvement, what improvement do you want to see? That information, you know, the district and the board can contact individuals within the district, but that's just a small percentage of Westmont that pays taxes to our district. So this broadens the search and broadens that data and that survey to say, okay, academics were the best of the best. How do you feel about the facility part of it? And what is your concern and your main priority of the facilities? That's what you're buying, is that all that data, all that community outreach, all that hard work to reach a larger pool of individuals. To answer the question on, do we need the consultants? That's a question the board would have to discuss, but, you know, to broaden that search and get that wide range data, you know, I would say it is needed. And especially with the history the district and the community has voted with big projects like this, it can only benefit.
It's kind of like, for us, it's about the facilities, right? We're trying to answer a facilities question. But this could also have been, this is an engagement that we want to answer a facilities question about. But if it was a different board, that it was like an engagement, they wanted to answer a teacher salary question, right? We want a community-driven plan, not a us-driven plan, not a administration-driven plan, but like a true, because it is the communities, right?
It's the community's district.
Yeah.
It's the community's buildings.
I still struggle with the timeline. I like can't wrap my brain around it because, like, how can the larger community say, like, how do you feel about our facilities if they're not like parents, you know, or.
Well, that's where the community outreach and that communication, that PR aspect that we can publicize on the website would help. Even though they're not community members, they still pay taxes. So this would affect taxpayers.
Oh, yes, that I get. But how can they effectively answer questions about our facilities without, like, that facilities planning piece coming first?
I think we'd get the answers that, I don't know about your facilities, what can
Yeah.
you tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's.
And how will we answer that? Because we
Right.
had that
Well-
architect guy, and, like, you know, we're going back to that other person we're trying to hire or retain, or, you know.
Well, we have that.
Yeah.
We truly have gotten, this is where we've come from. This is what we spent. We have the history. It needs to be presented in a well way to educate, you know, our community about where it is. I think that's one question, do you even know about our facilities? You can start there. Because I take that from there, like, this is our time to give the story too, to allow people to make a well-informed decision. Those that want it, you know, you're gonna have a piece of the community that's just like, I don't even know. We have to we have to get the information to find out what they know. And yeah, it's a large step, it's daunting, and that's why I think that the need is there.
And to answer your question, goes back to what are we buying? Because the consultant would tell the district, you know, the board, okay, these individuals don't know anything about the facilities, but they're taxpayers and they live in the community. This is how to reach that audience. And it could be benefit, or it could help or not help, you know, the
Right.
district, but it can help reach that community. So that's what the consultant would tell us, hey, based on the survey results and the communication, this is the best method to communicate with that group of people.
And I also think we do have, like, I see a big picture and get excited, oh, we can get answers, and we have a community now that we've done this, that we can get answers about how they feel about, like you said, administrators. But I think we do have to be clear when we start our questions that we stay in the lane of facilities, because we won't have the time to discuss every kind of detail with that.
Right.
So we're gonna have to be like, yes, this is a great thing. Yes, we're a small district. Maybe someone in the district office can answer that questions, but we're gonna stick to learning about facilities, what we need, and where to go from there.
before we meet on the 27th, can we find out if the, what's this guy? Ed Sullivan, if they will do something similar where like maybe we just want the surveys or?
Like custom.
Yeah, like how, because I
Kind
liked,
of
I liked
piecemeal
that
the
about,
breakdown.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Like what if we don't need the full package?
Like a breakdown of the services and
Yeah, yeah. I liked that about the second one because if we find out that we're in a great position, all we really need is just, great, we're on board. Let's do this, you know. Just, I think that would be a nice option to have. And I think that that could be something that could sway people's opinions one way or another towards one consulting group versus the other. If we have that flexibility with both of them.
And then I had another question that was raised by the first group, but I didn't know the second. I thought, for me, and I'm learning, and I'm going to be very cautious and careful. So the Sullivan Group, EOS, mentioned that they have two separate groups. So once they are done with obtaining the community's, like, I guess their wishes and their wants, once that's done and say, yes, we're about to do a referendum, they have a separate company to make sure that there are no lines crossed. There's a question for the second one. Do they have the same type of thing? What happens?
I think she was speaking about it as like the education. When
Right.
She was saying like the education program, that was his,
One company.
when he was.
Right, I know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, like, what do they do at that point was done? Do they provide anything else after that, or are they,
Right, are
like,
they just-
done, and then, so, and being very helpful and advising, like, okay, nope, you can't do that, watch out, group, that's not where we are, but do they, what do they do after?
so I know both of them, every piece of the group stick together through the end. So if one phase is completed by one group, that group still communicates with the
Right,
full
right.
team through the end of the process.
But they have a separate team? that
Yeah,
takes them. Okay.
yeah. And the first one has, majority of them are in-house.
Okay,
So where the second one, there is a team, but it's not in-house within the same company.
okay.
But no matter what, they're still throughout the entire process together.
That's a lot to digest.
Yeah,
It is.
great
Yeah.
questions and comments, everybody.
So to answer that
Jack,
first
do you have
question,
anything?
no, not ready to decide.
Not
Sorry.
ready to
No.
decide, yes to finance meeting
Yeah.
at 5 before the next meeting.
Yes,
Yeah?
will we get a reminder about that?
I'm not sure if I'll meet at the next board meeting. There's a track meet, it's the first one, so.
I think it's, what came apparent tonight is, I know that the board wants to truly know the mind of the community. That this board is committed to not doing it on their own, but to doing it in collaboration with our community at large. And that's admirable and the right way to do it. And at the same time, anybody who cares about this community wants the same. They want it to be a true community decision. To not only educate the community and get their authentic feedback, takes professionals to do that. I don't think we have the bandwidth to do that. So even though, I think that's why what these companies can facilitate for us is a gathering of information and a dissemination of information from the community. And that's really important. So, and I
also
don't know
think
that we
there's-
could do that on our own. That's why I think that
Well, I think that was some of the outcome too, that education for our internal staff. Like, I see this and I'm like, oh, that PR team, like, boy, they're gonna walk out of this with
Knowing a lot.
a
Yeah.
lot,
And the community
right?
outreach.
That is, I mean, it's a bit of like a, right? You hire educational consultants to work with, it's almost like a
2-for-1.
PR, it is a little bit of like a two-for-one
little
situation.
2-for-1.
Yeah.
I think it's really, two things really stand out about what you two have said to me. One is what you said, Anthony, about even if we did it, even if we didn't sleep for the next 6 months, none of us,
Right.
we would still only be able to reach who we can reach. And that's pretty big, because it's, I don't know the percentage, but it's a considerable, it could be the difference between, success and failure. that percentage that we just can't reach on our own. And the second thing is the full circle nature. I don't think that, Jack, you had a position that you didn't want to have a consultant, but you were skeptical when we spoke about this a month ago. You were skeptical. And I see a change in that from a month ago.
I was skeptical that we could engage the community in a meaningful and authentic way, and listen and educate and formulate all that and do it for the November timeline. But to your point, I'm more enthusiastic about hiring a consultant, because I think to really do a quality job, which I know that's what the board truly desires, is, and all of us do, is to get a real partnership with the community.
Right.
Will take somebody to help facilitate that.
Yeah. It takes skill. It takes knowledge, tools.
Expertise, experience.
It takes all those things yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So we are meeting prior to the 27th meeting, that's what we've scheduled. And that is to discuss the possibility of hiring
Finance meeting
one of these, yeah.
to discuss.
And then I'll just say, I think we all know this, but I'll say it, that whatever questions, and thanks Anthony, he'll help facilitate those for us. I guess we probably have emails, but if you guys have questions, definitely send them to myself or Anthony and help you take in this information if you need further clarification. All right, I'm going to move us along to the board reports. I guess I have one thing I was asking, but you kind of spoke about it, the Realty Fair. You guys, I don't know if you guys want to speak on it or anything else.
I want to say something. I didn't speak up at the Realtor Fair because I didn't feel like my brain was in a prepared manner, but I ended up talking with Edith afterward, Edith and Sonia, and one of the realtors asked the question is, why is Westmont doing so well, and why is there such involvement from here to here? You know, from everybody down here all the way through the admin, through the board, through the village. Why? And Jack spoke to it being about the culture. From what I've witnessed over the years, now, mind you, I lived in an apartment in Westmont right after I got married. The day we brought my oldest home from the hospital, we got the phone call that we got the house that we live in now, in Westmont. I already had started looking at the schools, and that was 14 years ago. And as Jack would know, Westmont was not doing good numbers-wise. The high school didn't look good. I was like, oh, great. Am I going to be able to, could we pay to send him to the outer schools? But we didn't do that. He goes to school right around the corner here. Okay, good. The things I've seen happen over the last 14 years in this district are beyond amazing. And that's what was being represented to the Realtor Fair. The culture is amazing. The groupings, everybody's in. I know we've hit struggles, but what I've seen up until the COVID years, growth through community engagement, through just listening to families, whether it's just a phone call, it's just an email between teachers, staff, admin, back and forth. The investment in the village, because there was a lot of things I saw early on that I was like, why aren't we a little more cohesive? Why aren't the stairs we have climbed since then? COVID, of course, a hiccup, but I feel like we are so much more powerful since COVID ended. I'm watching all of this, and it's amazing seeing the things that are getting done and that everyone is buying in, positive and negative. All the admin, all the staff, everybody's taking that information and working with it. They're taking criticisms and going, we could improve here. I can see where you're coming from. I can see what's going on. And it's just amazing seeing everybody come together and everything. Side note on all this, like, parents, not everybody can be involved the way we are, the way other people are, but people are making their voices known. Hey, I noticed this, blah, blah, blah. Can I help you in this aspect? This is how I can help. It's amazing. Like, our sports teams are shooting up, and it's because of parents. Like, the hiring of Peggy and Josh, they're families that have been in the district forever. Watching Dave and Mike at the Boys with the Wrestling. They're parents that are working with our teams. Everybody's so invested. And it is just amazing, and I'm telling you, a lot of us have all been in here since we've been in here the same amount of time. You came a little later, but we've been here as long. I can't remember, when did Connor start in your older boys were here?
He was 3rd grade.
Okay.
I don't think I came a little later, it's kindergarten.
I was gonna say, but well, yeah, you're still, yeah, because it was just, yeah, there's 2 years difference between mine and the oldest and Mary. It's just amazing, and seeing these realtors take it in, the ones that knew, some of our realtors have had kids go through the school district, and they were able to speak to the changes they've seen and everything. It's just been amazing. I just want to say it's been amazing being a part of all of this, all these years, and watching everybody thrive in different ways, and the way everybody is working together. That's all.
Realtor Fair killed it.
It did.
Good comment. Any other, I think we had some other successful things going, and as always, like I think the Valentine's Dance at the junior high.
Yes.
Good things.
I want to call it the BPAC meeting.
I was just gonna do the
Last
same,
week,
but
like,
you go ahead.
You can tag on. Great parent turnout, really cool, like, we got some great presentations from staff. BPAC is really,
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, first of all, that I've been to, I think it's maybe the 3rd one I've been to this year, I'm not sure, and they keep more people coming to the meetings, and different people, so that's really nice to see. A wider representation is great. And also, just the work that the whole group of bilingual ELL, EL, the whole group of administrators and teachers and everything that they're doing to bolster that program, the programs that are in there is great. It's great. It's a pet peeve thing of mine, and to see it thriving this way is really nice.
You guys missed a good policy meeting.
We didn't miss it, we just didn't bring it up. I was there.
It was fun. Join us. Any other board reports? All right. Future meetings and events. So incoming 9th grade student night, February 15th, 6:30 at Westmont High School. If you know of incoming 9th graders in our district and families, please let them know, remind them. The PTO dance, Manning and Miller, February 16th. So
that is this Friday. It's gonna be lit.
That's them little ones, and then the raffle they're having during that as well. So
Move to the high school if you missed it.
Okay, 6 p.m. at the high school. There's no school February 19th for President's Day. The Westmont High School musical, Freaky Friday. Is that the high school or the?
That's high school.
Okay.
Well, Aladdin is junior high.
Okay, got it. February 23rd and 24th, 7 p.m. at Westmont High School. The PR committee meeting, February 26th, 6 p.m. at South School. Our next CUSD 201 board meeting, February 27th at 6 p.m. It says South, is that right?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay, Village Hall, but just prior at 5 o'clock, it will be a finance facilities meeting, 5 p.m., and that's open to the community. And then we have a STEM night, February 28th, 6 p.m. at Westmont High School.
Yeah.
We're
Calendar,
moving,
it's
we're
starting.
shaking.
Starting.
If there are no other comments or questions, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the February 13th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Adjourn.